welcome to the Texas Ministry sponsored Recalibrate PLC call. And today we're hanging out, Ephraim, you and I are hanging out with Phill, who is the young adults and youth pastor leader at Wake Church. So glad to have you here with us. We're actually on location in your spot.
Yes.
So it's pretty cool as we get a chance to kind of focus in on youth and young adult.
Yep.
What's the occasion? Why you feel like we need to spend so much time focusing on youth and young adults?
You know, I think we're in a day and age where, you know, the next generation is that population that the Lord really wants us to reach out to. They are bright, energetic, have a heart for just reaching people. You know, I think one of the key things is there's a huge disconnect in today's in our church where the next generation is not connecting with the local church, and we're finding a lot of churches that are having a difficult time reaching them. And so when we get an opportunity, you know, firsthand to see God do some great things through Phill and his team, you know, I would love to just hear more about how it's happening and just have our audience here some practical insights regarding reaching the next gen. And so throughout different Recalibrate podcasts, we're going to hear from different practitioners, church planters, you know, young adult leaders, youth pastors, kids ministry teams, and so we're going to talk about a variety of topics. But anyway, just to give you some insights on that.
Yeah, so we're going to jump in here with Phill, and you know, the current statistics tell us that the generation that's considered Gen Z is the most unchurched generation that has been around for the past, 150 years here in the United States. What is it that you see as you're interacting with teens and young adults? I mean, do you find that they didn't grow up in a church and that you're really bringing them in, or what's your feedback on that?
There's a solid mixture. You know, we're here southern in Texas, so you do have a lot of families that grow up in church. It's part of, you know, how their parents were brought up. And so they grow up in church and they come to church, but there's also the students that are like, what do you mean church? Like, we see y'all and y'all helping the community, but we don't step foot inside of that. And so then we offer free food and we get some kids that have never stepped into a church come to church.
You mean food still works to draw teenagers and young adults in? Free food still
always
works?
work.
I mean, that, right there's a number one practicality. Bring food and they're likely to like it.
Food will always work. Our biggest youth night is still whenever we offered free honey butter chicken biscuits.
Honey butter chicken biscuits from Whataburger.
It works.
All right, so
works.
it's not pizza these days.
It's
honey
not pizza.
butter.
I always say you get 3 to 4 pizza cards a year. You can have the pizza, but you don't want to overdo the pizza. You got to keep it cool. Got to keep it innovative.
That's great. I was literally just on Facebook last week looking at a group of youth pastors, and somebody was a new youth pastor, and they were going, okay, guys, we used to feed, but the kids are coming in now saying they're not hungry anymore. They like to prefer to eat on their own. But what you're telling me is, at least here in the southern section of Texas.
Yes.
Right?
Not
in the home of Whataburger.
Here's the thing. Exactly. When you have
can we get a sponsorship, Whataburger?
For real. Or Raising Cane's, if y'all wouldn't mind sponsoring us, that would be awesome.
So chicken is really popular.
Yes, it is.
I think that's an important thing to recognize, is the shift maybe is not so much in food, but in the preferred diet. You know, and that, I mean, chicken strips, I mean, where I live in Dallas, we got chicken restaurants popping up left and right, from a variety of different types. Everybody's doing their own spin on chicken. And, you know, kids, they eat chicken strips.
Yeah.
They eat, I'm sorry, those are called wings now.
Boneless wings.
Wings. But, you know, there's that component. So
No, yeah, we try to, you know, drawing in students that are unchurched, obviously, as we've built up a core of students here, but trying to still reach the unchurched. We try to keep it fresh. Like, we don't want to do pizza every week. We've had a cereal bar. There's really easy, simple things if you start thinking. Pop-Tart bars, donut bar.
All right, real quick. What's the best flavor Pop-Tart?
Pop-Tart, my favorite is it's a berry flavor. It's got the purple on top with the blue drizzle.
Oh man, I'm like a frosted cherry. I'm the frosted cherry guy.
Frosted cherry guy. Hey.
And that's what works for me. What do you got?
You know, brown
sugar cinnamon. Yeah, of course you
can never go wrong with
I
that.
love that one.
Never go wrong.
Yeah, but here's what I found like I prefer actually the H-E-B store brand Pop-Tarts over Kellogg's Pop
I
Tarts.
can't. I gotta stay true to the brand.
You got to
Yeah,
stay true to the
yeah.
brand.
You
Oh,
gotta,
man,
you gotta stay brand.
Yeah.
You gotta stay with the brand on that
I
one.
found those HEB ones, just they hit my pocketbook right, and they hit my taste buds right. And so my kids, we don't have an HEB in town, and our HEB is like 30 minutes away. So when we go to HEB, they're like, bring some Pop Tarts and bring some tortillas, because
Not here. I can see our
yeah,
HEB.
your
Yeah.
HEB is
I'm looking
right
at it
across the
right
street.
I
Yeah,
know.
so
I mean, HEB tortillas are next level.
They are,
though.
man. The
I will
chips, the
say
queso.
they have some quality food.
yeah. So
yes.
for those of our in our audience who may be listening outside of the state of Texas,
yeah,
get to Texas.
HEB.
Just make your way to
Literally.
Texas. So, yeah. Hey, man, let's talk about some of the dynamics. We talked about being unchurched and those sort of things. This month is kind of the 4-year anniversary of the COVID lockdown and those sort of things. And so that means that like teenagers and young adults, the older teenagers and the early young adults, 16 to 24, like COVID lockdown was serious to their adolescent development.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some things, some ideas maybe that you see that are still kind of, I would call them COVID hangovers that are wrestling, that they're wrestling with, or maybe that they didn't get that you got because your high school and college career was quote unquote normal?
Yeah, I see it a lot with the young adults. It's funny, I can see clear distinctions between youth and young adults in terms of their receptiveness, but the young adults thing that we still see a lot, that's kind of like the hangover from COVID, is like, oh, I'll just tune in online this morning, versus coming in person and building that community. And it's tough. There is a beauty to online service, and what it did for our church during that season was incredible. We were able to reach people that we never even really thought of reaching. But in terms of like today, especially with young adults, like we just had a young adults hangout last night and it was awesome. And it just reminded me like there's nothing like more important within like the young adult community than actually hanging out and doing life together. And whenever it's tough, I've seen the statistics of going off to college and it's tough to find a church. And I hear it even talking to them, they're like, yeah, there's not really a good church in my hometown, and there's not, a lot of good college ministries out there. But it's you have to want community, and when you want community, you'll find it.
I think that community piece is so important, and I was just reading some research talking about the fact that people, one of the hardest barriers for them to overcome in getting back into church is that they moved away from where they had been going to church.
Yeah.
And that's just an expression of community. And I think one of the things for me that I'm seeing, I'm curious of your thoughts, is the young adult community that I'm around, that they, because they had a lot of life interrupted, they're still behaving in ways that kind of like the old youth group ways.
Yeah.
And they're looking for like things that people got when they were sophomores, juniors, and seniors in historic youth ministries. Now I'm watching 21, 22-year-olds try and create these kind of experiences, almost like they're not out of youth group, but they're out of youth group. You get what I'm saying? I don't know if you're seeing that.
I do see that a lot. And it's tough because, gosh, I feel for that class of 2020 that got everything stripped away from them. They didn't get to do their prom, their normal graduation. We had baseball seasons getting canceled, soccer seasons coming to an end shorter. All these different things happened to them that they didn't really get to experience. The normal runaround of things, having a normal graduation party, even with that. And so, yeah, you do see a lot of them, it's not like they're slower to develop, but they're just curious. They're more curious. They didn't experience the normal go through things, and they're probably are a little hurt by that. Like I couldn't imagine the pain. Like, and at least for me, I graduated in 2014. I remember my prom. I remember my graduation party. I remember walking across the stage that day. I got to meet JJ Watt that day because it was at
That's
NRG.
kind of memorable for a Houston sports fan like you.
It is. But all that to say, like that opportunity wouldn't have arose if we weren't having graduation in the first place. So all these core memories that I have of my senior year and how crazy I was, but also like how much fun it was. those they didn't get to have. And so it is tough for that specific particular
let's
group.
drop down to like the high schoolers, like the 16-year-old that we're seeing right now. They would have been 12 when COVID broke out.
Yeah.
And so their middle school experience was this mixture of online learning
Yes.
and face-to-face, hybrid days, depending on what school district they went to. They all took it a different approach, and their church experience, because middle school is hard enough. I mean, I can't imagine going through middle school, separated out. Maybe it was easier because they didn't have all the compounding drama.
Yeah.
But we also know that, the middle school era is where we learn a lot of big social cues.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious maybe what you see in somebody who's like a high school sophomore or junior today that feels different, or that you empathize with in a different way than maybe, 5 years ago.
Yeah, I would say, like, when I'm looking at the scope of our students, obviously when a junior high student comes into youth, they're always a little nervous, a little timid. And it depends on the student, because you also have the crazy kids. From the general context of our youth group, we do have a ton of freshmen and sophomore. Like that's probably close to 60% of our students is just freshmen and sophomore. And what I've noticed is I don't want to call it an addiction, but to, social media, we don't use text message because our friends only use Snapchat.
Their use of social media is different than what we grew up with.
Yeah,
anyway.
It's like that's how they communicate.
Yeah.
And so I would actually say though that they're more receptive and more searching for something real than a lot of people are.
That's good.
You're saying, that's good. So give us some more. Why do you think that's good?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that they're looking for that kind of I think community is a big aspect. I mean, I have 2 youth students living under my roof right now, and
You mean they're not your kids, they're just students?
yeah. I have 2 teenagers, and they love coming here Wednesday nights and be a part of Wake Youth, and but we're seeing that they really are just gravitating towards authentic community, so I think that's a big component there with that. So
what I see that they hunger for community, right? But I also see them like searching for truth.
Yes, that's
truth and justice.
Yes.
Yep.
And because social media, whether it's Snap or Twitter or Insta or TikTok or wherever, we can produce so much content so quickly, and it's produced everywhere, and then they have access to it so quickly. I mean, instantaneous.
Yeah.
That they're trying to discern through and the political arguments and the presentations of truth. They're seeing both sides very rapidly, and they're trying to discern through those.
Yeah.
So what are you guiding or helping or trying to navigate this with them as they're looking at insights, opinions, and observations, and I mean, all sorts of things from YouTube to TikTok and everything in between. How are you helping them in that pursuit of truth and justice?
The number one thing that I'm trying right now, and it's literally, we had the first 3 months of the year. We're in the new facility, so I was still kind of in a welcoming stage, getting new guests. But I mean, now we've got a solid rhythm, a really solid core of students. We've seen our youth ministry double in the last 3 months, which has been incredible. It's been awesome. But since April started, we've been going through the book of First Peter. And what I'm trying to do is I've offered like a devotional for the students on the Bible app. I went and found a devotional through First Peter, and I'm trying to instill this yearning of wanting to actually read scripture, make it simple and practical, so that they can build those habits. Because at the root of all of it, they have to first read the gospel, read the Bible, read scripture, and build that into a habit, something that they do daily before they do anything else, before they do any scrolling, before they start searching on YouTube, whatever it is. Find what scripture says about whatever it is that you're wanting to learn more about. Lean in on faith. Understand that, hey, God's in control, and this might not make sense to me, but it's His will, it's His doing, so I'm gonna trust Him, and just put scripture at the core of everything. That's something that I feel like we've missed and we've kind of strayed away from. No longer is youth ministry about, at least for me, this is my opinion, no longer is youth ministry about the big event. It's to me, I'm trying to actually instill discipleship into these students and have
And that's a hard shift, isn't it?
It's a really tough shift. But the key that I found is if you can get one guy student and one girl student that are really focused in, they'll lead the rest. The students lead the students, and you can try to do as much as you want as a leader and as a mentor, but the students are going to lead the students, and so you want to find key leaders in that youth ministry to push those students in the right direction.
I love that. I love that thought process and that perspective, and I think we lose sight of that raising up leaders is key for effective ministry. And not just leaders. I'm not talking about adult youth leaders, right? Or young adult youth leaders. I'm talking about student leaders. I think there's a missing component there. We have several in Wake Youth that, Phill has just empowered to just, hey, do this,
So
do
talk
that.
a little
It's
bit about that
great.
student leader. Like, how do you identify a student leader, and how do you keep that student leader motivated?
Yeah, the first thing is usually I did a little breakout session at the regional gathering for Texas Ministries, but the first step is like getting them to serve on a Sunday. And when they express a wanting to serve at any type of event or on Sunday mornings, you're like, okay, there's something in there that they want more. So then you just start you start pushing on them in our small groups. On Wednesday nights, we have small groups after the message. And so we'll ask certain students that we see that within our leaders, we'll ask them to give input if it's a tough conversation or, students become timid or quiet sometimes. But we'll ask them to give input. Hey, what do you think about this? And you just kind of start getting them to become comfortable speaking out in front of the students. Because whenever they start doing that, that's when they're going to be able to start leading them. And, we have group chats, and there's a couple of students that I will text personally, be like, hey, like, can you check up on this? Can you check up on that? Versus me running to check up on the situation. Because as the youth ministry grows, and for whoever's listening, you always want your youth ministry to grow. You're not going to be able to do it by yourself. And your students always aren't going to want to listen to your leaders. That's just how they are. That's how students operate. We've been there before too. But if you can start getting the students to speak into the student's life, it's a huge key. And
Let's go back, because you guys are in a quickly evolving. You said over the past 2 or 3 months, you guys have nearly doubled in size, and so there's a lot of really exciting and interesting things happening there, and even the dynamic of, I think for students who are engaged in relationship with people that they don't know as long, it may be easier to lead them than, say, maybe somebody that you've known your whole life. Because I'm in a church setting where a lot of my students, a lot of my teenagers, they've been in church together since they were sucking on pacifiers. All right. And so trying to get them to lead one another it's like, nah, that ain't happening. Right. But when let's say you've got a smaller group, how can you utilize the students in that smaller group who are maybe leading more honest peers, in the sense that they've known each other, their parents know each other? There's a different dynamic, I think, in that setting versus the stranger, or hey, I know we go to the same campus, but I don't have any interaction with your family. You don't know my family, and so maybe my stuff doesn't smell as bad because, well, we don't know each other's stuff, kind of thing.
There has to be that first encounter of like authenticity. Like, I've done ministry with my cousin, and I've done ministry, or I do ministry now with my cousin and one of my best friends, my roommates. And there has to be that moment where you come to him and you're like, bro, like, you've seen me mess up, you've seen my mistakes, you've seen me be dumb, but like, I'm not trying to do that anymore. And at least in my case, I've been blessed enough to where they don't want to experience that type of stuff either. So we're all going to push each other and run in the right direction. And yeah, I may be speaking into their life, on a Wednesday night or on a young adult gathering, but what isn't often seen behind the scenes is like they're speaking into my life on the back end when we're going through scripture in our wake houses, when we're sitting down just having a conversation. Like it's not a one-way thing, and it may seem like that because I get the honor of holding a microphone in front of a group of people, but there's still people and there's still my peers, people that do life with me that are also speaking into life.
I think that's a really powerful thing to think about when you're talking to a student who you're asking to really step up into leadership, and they're going, look, I can't talk to these people because they know me.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, don't you understand? That's why you can talk to them, because they know you.
100%.
But just because you start talking doesn't mean you should stop listening.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's the threat that we experience in leadership. A lot of times it's like, we're given a microphone, and so therefore we think we're supposed to be the spokesperson, not only for just the little bit that we're assigned, but now we have to become the spokesperson for everything. And so we start talking and we stop listening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about that over there? E, you're nodding your head quite a bit on that.
And also too, don't underestimate upperclassmen, right? Like you have juniors and seniors. If your youth group has a junior or a senior that is, not only following Jesus, but has leadership capabilities, and you're seeing them, teach them about leadership. Teach them about the future vision of raising up leaders, and talk to them about the importance of investing in the freshmen and sophomores or middle school kids. Because what I'm seeing it right now, where you have the freshmen and sophomores looking up to the juniors and seniors in the youth group. And as that leader, that the student leader goes, hey, we're going to be doing a Bible study over here, like they'll show up because the student is being proactive and intentional on that. It's funny because even at our wake house, my wife and I lead a wake house, and one of the things that we're seeing is youth students showing up. They're hungry for the word, and like one youth student who's a upperclassman says, hey, we're gonna go over and hang out at pastor's house, and we're gonna go through the book of John together. Let's show up. And like 3 or 4 of them show up, and I'm like, hey, I'm glad you're here. Like even last night, I'm like, I'm glad you're here. Like, did you come with somebody? Oh yeah, I was invited by so-and-so, this student leader. And I was like, okay. And like first time in my house, and he's there, and like 3 or 4 of them just show up along, just studying the Bible, like, in which I'm like, wow.
The contagion is exciting. The contagiousness and the impact
that an upperclassman has in a youth group,
right?
That's empowered, in which Phil has done a great job in empowering these upperclassmen and saying, hey, like, go make a difference, impact some of these other students. It's amazing to see students like gravitate towards that kind of leadership in a youth group.
And what I was going to say too is like, it's not always easy in the everyday life for those students to have that opportunity to be vulnerable. And this isn't a plug, but because I saw it with my own eyes when we were sitting in our shipping container, like at youth camp, when you can create an atmosphere or an event for students away from the hustle and bustle, away from their cell phones and the distractions, where they can just open up and be vulnerable. Like I saw the students that were forced to come to camp because their parents signed them up, sharing their heart out in tears. I saw the kids that signed up last day.
Let's talk about that though, because just a few minutes ago you said, hey, I'm recognizing it's not about the big event, it's about the discipleship. But there's still a role, a part in which the big event, camp or a retreat, is a significant catalyst.
Yes, of course.
A significant catalyst. And I think maybe we fell into the trap in youth ministry of trying to do a big event every Wednesday night. Every Wednesday night. Come on out. We've got the games, the slides, the galore.
Students don't want that. Dude, they're tired. They're exhausted, just like us. Maybe in the summertime, you can do a couple more things. But
you just said something there I think is important for us to remember. And that is that students, especially at least what I discovered, is midweek, they were tired.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the struggles that I experienced over the past couple of years was that they didn't want to reflectively dialogue because they were just so tired.
Yeah.
The emotional strain that and weight that they were carrying because of school, but I think also because of just the phone, the access to all the information, was just overwhelming. They didn't know it. I mean, they don't know it. It's not their fault. It's really the adult's fault who gave them the phone. But
Yeah.
but which was given away at some big youth event. Come, we'll give you an iPhone. Right? That kind of thing. But to have the time to get away, to pull out, it's always been important in youth ministry. It's always been important in youth ministry. And today I think it's just as important, if not just a hair more important.
Yeah.
Particularly if we get to a place that had no Wi-Fi or cell service.
Yeah. It's huge. It is huge.
I mean, those are hard places to find because, camps are like, we've got Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
because our cell service is not very good.
Yeah.
But if, I remember we were at camp together this past summer, and, those big metal shipping containers that we're sleeping in, the cell service ain't great in those.
Yeah.
And the Wi-Fi repeaters aren't covering all the
Nope.
ground. And because of the rhythm and the routine, they got away from their devices a little bit more. And we all know, because we experience it in our own lives, that the devices, they're good for some things, not good for all things.
Yeah.
Good for some things, not good for all things.
Nope.
You talked about the Bible app. The Bible's on a phone. I'm just curious. You mentioned like a First Peter reading plan.
Yeah.
Are there any particular, like, these segments of Scripture really seem to be hitting really strong with my students right now? You mentioned First Peter. You mentioned Gospel of John. You may have just been throwing that out just because it's the first one that came to mind. But
all of our wake houses are going through the Gospel of John.
everybody's doing
So
John.
everybody's doing it. So as a
But
community.
I mean, like if a student is on their own, or what are you hearing from them? Or as you're engaging and you're teaching with them, is like, no, they are resonating with Genesis 1, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever,
I think what's really cool, and I wouldn't say there's a particular scripture or something that's resonating well with them, but I had a friend come up, or not a friend, a student. He's a friend of Josiah, a friend that has been coming with him, and he came up and he was like, "Hey, like, I want to read the Bible, but I have no clue where to start." And to me, like, that was the coolest thing, is the
That's
fact
awesome.
that you have these these unchurched people, and then you do have our core students here that do still want to read the Bible, but they're wanting to read.
Yeah.
That's like the most important thing, because like I'm a 28-year-old person, and it's still tough for me to want to read. So if I can start instilling that into somebody that is 15, 16-year-old wanting to read scripture and dive in, like, that's the most important thing that they could do right now. One of the most important rhythms that they could start to find. And so I told them the simple, hey, we're going through First Peter right now, but if you want more, like, start with Proverbs. Like, it's a great way to start.
Why'd you tell them to go to Proverbs?
Just because there's one for every single day. Really simple. I was like, hey, there's 31 books of Proverbs. Wake up in the morning, whatever day it is, open up Proverbs for that day. Open up chapter 5 if it's April 5th.
For me, I love the book of Proverbs.
Yeah.
All right. And what's frustrating for me as a parent, I've got, my oldest two are into the young adult category now. They're 18 and 21, and my youngest is 10, so she's junior youth. She's not quite youth yet, but I know it's coming. All right. And as a parent, one of the things for me is, like, as I'm parenting my kids, some of the shenanigans and the things that they've done seem so foolish that I just want to take it and say, read Proverbs, read it now. This is you.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But I mean, how do you think, like, the Proverbs teaching about wisdom and money, decisions, friends? I mean, is that still like information that you think that teenagers and young adults are going, wow, I didn't know that this wisdom was around?
They should. It's tough because the culture, at least in terms of the dealing with youth, this one's tough because you have the youth that are brought everything on from their influencers that they see in their friends at school, but then you get into the young adults that have to start doing life on their own, and they're like, oh, like, man, you telling me how to create a budget? Like, come on, dude, I don't want to do this. And so the young adults are a lot more receptive to that wisdom, and, you know, trying to start figuring out things for themselves and better themselves and, you know, grow themselves. With the youth, they still are so young and they still have all of their dreams that, you know, they want to be a YouTuber now, and
Everybody wants to be an influencer.
They want to be an influencer.
That's the number one career path of a 12-year-old right now.
And it's tough because you don't want to kill that. You just want to show them, like, it's not about you in that sense.
I mean, after all, look, I mean, we want to be influencers.
Exactly.
We got a podcast.
We're having podcasts. There is a
You're living your dream, kids.
there's a healthy medium to that. And so with the students, you have to, you know, push them towards that wisdom over and over and over again, and keep reminding them, like, hey, keep reading this. Like, you read this and then you forgot what it said in a week, so go back and read it again. Like, keep instilling that into your heart, into your mind.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good thing to say to a student or a young adult or any of us, honestly, is like, just because you forgot doesn't mean it's not true.
Yep.
Yeah.
And one of the things I say around my church a lot is that forgetfulness leads to unfaithfulness.
Yeah.
Good.
And that many times that we forget that God is active, and so therefore we start acting in ways as if God is not there.
Yeah.
Or we start panicking because we forget that God provided in the past, and so he can provide now and he can provide into the future. And so we get forgetful. And if you look throughout scripture, there's all these calls of remember what the Lord has done. You read through the Psalms. I mean, it's always remember. That, you know, what God is up to. All right, let's talk just briefly here as we're kind of winding down here, but just like youth ministry doesn't happen too strongly without parents, right? In my experience, parents are oftentimes the number one motivator.
Yeah.
Or maybe not motivator, but the number one driving force, because teenagers don't drive, and they drive later and later nowadays. We were talking about juniors and seniors. When we were juniors and seniors, everybody's driving. Today, they may catch an Uber, right? But they're waiting till 17, 18, sometimes 21 before they get their driver's license. How is it that a church needs to be thinking about, you know, engaging the parent for the sake of the youth ministry?
Yeah. Well, I think what's huge for me, and I would encourage, you know, anybody that's in a leadership position over a youth ministry to get plugged into a, like, whatever small group setting you have at your church. For me, we call it wake houses, just a Bible study, you know, house groups, whatever you call it. But find one that has the most parents there. Find a house that has the most parents there and get plugged in there for one semester, for one session of whatever you're going through, and start building those relationships. You don't need, like, you just want to be authentic, show them you're real, and build a relationship with them, even if it's just, you know, a once a week thing. But you build that relationship, and then you have a reason to start talking to them on Sundays when you see them, out in the community when you see them, and the student. And they see you doing life with their student, and they see you studying the scripture with them. So they know that there's, you know, some authenticity behind that. So,
man, that's gold right there. It's like, hey, youth leader, youth pastor, remember, you're not just ministering to the student, you're ministering to that whole household.
Yes.
So make sure you know those parents and that they know that you're actually studying the scripture.
Yep.
They see your struggle a bit, and they can come like, that's gold right there.
And then just show up at their events. You show up at student events and go find the parent that is there and sit with them.
Say that again. Say that again. Go find what?
Go find the parent that is there so you can sit with them at the student event. And
so, like, if you go to the soccer game, don't just go and stand over on the corner and cheer on the kid on the field, but go find their parent.
Find them. I just went to a track meet. I sat next to one of our students' grandma. She doesn't go here, but she was like, so you're the youth pastor that has been preaching to my student every week. And she was like, that's awesome. Like, I love what you're doing. And just building a relationship with the grandmother was huge. And, you know, his dad was right there next to him. And so it was really cool to to do that. But yeah, go find the parent or whoever's there.
The support system, the
Yeah,
parents,
the
the guardians, the
support system, the
grandparents,
brothers, the
tias,
siblings,
and-
yeah, whatever it
all of
is.
them, yeah.
You know,
Daddy E, what do you got to say?
no,
on that?
and I that's huge. That is on point, because I think sometimes we get caught up in the church about, all right, outreach. Yes, we're all about outreach and reaching the school district and everything like that. But there is a powerful component to being intentional to these students' events, sitting with the parent, just like Phill said. That's outreach. Right? It's just a different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Because now they see that he cares, and it's not just him and his team.
Right.
I've seen him and his youth leaders out there supporting the kids, cheering them on, sitting with the parents, and then they get an opportunity to just interact, talk, share. So and trust is built because relationships, trust is built. And so what? They're going to trust.
They're going to trust Phill. They're going to trust the leadership
and
team
the leadership team
with their kid.
because they're showing that they care.
Yeah.
And they love.
Because they recognize that, oh, this is shared. And you recognize this is shared. And I know 20 years ago, there was a buzz in youth ministry over, hey, what we do in youth stays in youth. And we keep parents out. And I think that did a lot of harm in a lot of spaces. And I think there's still some of that philosophy that echoes around a little bit. It's like parents shouldn't be involved. If parents are the number one driving force, literally they drive the kid to the youth program, then the parent has to know the schedule.
Yep.
They have to know the leadership, and they have to trust that it's going to be right.
And here's the thing too, you always got to think the long game. You always got to think about the future. He was visiting kids that were middle school kids at the time. They became sophomores. They became freshmen in high school, and then sophomores. And when they become sophomores and juniors, they're driving.
Maybe.
So, well,
not where I live.
In some parts around here, they're driving.
If you could get one though that drives,
you
get
you get one that drives, it changes the
They're
game.
the coolest kid.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. But the thing is, though, the parents are not dropping them off.
Right.
They're coming, they're driving, and they're bringing their friends.
And that's where I think it really begins to change. Is like, up until about 16 years of age, the parents are the number one driving force.
Yeah.
Right. And then when they get a driver's license or they get some independence, they get a job, there is a change in there. And so it really then becomes the shift to how do you get the student or the young adult to want to come back to, I'm just going to sit online and watch online.
Yeah.
Because mom and dad aren't driving you to church anymore.
Yeah.
There has to be an ownership factor that plays into it. And I think those are really powerful things. But fundamentally, it's like if you're present in their life, then they are more likely to be present in what you're offering.
Exactly.
So,
and it's easy for me, and because I like the sporting things, but I've had to sit through my dance recitals. I've had to sit through my things that aren't as fun. But the track meets, the basketball games, the wrestling match, the soccer matches. Like I'm screaming, like I'm cheering, I'm getting mad, I'm ready to fight for these kids.
Yeah.
I'm ready to jump over the
their
railing.
parents
if I
are
have
looking
to.
at you like, dude, chill. It's
calm
okay.
calm down. I'm like, no, I'm
Well,
ready.
Maybe on a future episode we can sit down and we can talk about how it is that you are adjusting to managing your life from being a single youth supporter to a married youth supporter to now a dad.
I was gonna mention that. I'll say a brief thing is like I used to go to like 2 student things a week, and it was super easy.
Not to mention all the video games you played with.
Yeah,
them.
exactly. I was hopping on video games with them. Now I try. My wife, she's amazing. And
We'll stop right there. And
yeah, well,
Go
end it
back
right
to
there.
another time.
But I try to tell her like, hey, like if I can have twice a month where I can go out and support our students, and usually the most convenient night is whenever we have our wake house, because I'm already scheduled to be out. So I'll let the group know like, hey, I'm not going to be here tonight. I'm just going to support a student at one of his events. It's the only night of the week I can. But yeah, I try to tell our leaders, hey, twice a month if you can, at least once a month, like just show up in a student's life.
We'll circle back around.
Yeah.
We'll have a conversation about the managing of the minister's household and schedule,
Yes.
because it's tough.
Very tough. Yeah.
Hey, Phil, thanks for joining us. It's been great
Absolutely.
to have
Thanks
you
for
on
having
board. And I hope that we hit some practical
it
points
was
for
great.
you.
Great.
So, but to definitely, some big things. Stay current with your food. Keep mixing it up. That's a big one right
Yep.
there. Empower those student leaders rather than just really expecting you have to do it all.
Yep.
Talk and listen. The powerful thing. Put them back into the gospel. Put them back into Scripture. Those are big things right there. And then if you can get that driver, let them drive. So, all right. Thanks so much for joining us for the Recalibrate PLC podcast. Talk to you later.
See ya.
See ya.